Hey there, dog enthusiasts and my dog-loving friends. Welcome back to the Paws and Profits podcast, where we create success for pet dog owners and aspiring pet dog trainers just like you. I'm Karen Laws, the interior dog trainer and host of the Paws and Profits podcast. And this week, in recognition of October as Dog Adoption Month, we are diving into a topic that might surprise you, especially if you've recently adopted a dog or you're thinking about it. But before we dive into it, whether you're watching this on my YouTube channel or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please be sure to subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, ring the bell so that you're notified and you don't miss an episode. You'll get notified as soon as they come out. My mission is always to reach more pet owners and pet professionals to remove the chaos and the confusion that may come with new dogs or any dog and build bonds that last a lifetime. This episode is called Why Your Adopted Dog Doesn't Owe You Gratitude. It's a conversation that we don't have enough. The emotional expectations that we put on rescue dogs, especially in those early days, you might feel like you've saved them, but they're not thinking, hey, thank you, human. Hey, thank you, human savior. I'll be forever grateful. No, that's okay, but that's not what they're thinking. What are they thinking? Let's dive in and let me tell you about Cooper the Hound. By the time I met Cooper the Walker Hound, he'd had 3 homes before he was a year old. Think about that. 12 months in a year, he wasn't quite a year old, so that's roughly 1 home every 4 months. Barely out of puppy stage, and wow. I was unwilling home number 4, but more on that later. Cooper wasn't a bad dog, he was a hound, through and through, just like Lotto. He is high energy, driven by scent, lives by his nose more than most breeds, but highly intelligent and determined. Notice I didn't say stubborn. How many of you label a dog as stubborn because it just won't do what you tell it? That's not stubborn. That's a different language. And when dogs are determined, they do what works best for them. That's determination. That's not stubbornness. Most dogs aren't what we humans define as stubborn. Cooper, for example, wasn't stubborn. He was just confused. He was a classic case of a dog whose genetic needs weren't fully understood by humans or supported by anyone in his life. Actually, the first family that adopted him after he was 4 months old had been surrendered to the shelter. This was the one piece of history that I did know. They brought him home at Thanksgiving, let him off in the house. There's like friggin' big people everywhere. Here's this brand new puppy. He's not scared because he's not old enough to be scared yet. But what does he do? No one's watching him. Jumps on the table, cleans off the table. Turkey indigestion for Cooper. Back to the shelter the next day. I don't know what happened in his second home, but by the time Cooper came to me with his third owners, they were frazzled, to say the least. That's the polite explanation, because in reality, they were angry. They were angry at the shelter for matching them with this dog, which was clearly a mismatch. They were angry with each other because, let's face it, when you've got that much frustration and anxiety in your house, you're going to look for somebody to blame, and it's usually your partner because they're the closest one. Because that's what happens when you have a high-level dog in your house that you're not prepared for. When I did ask them, sort of, what's a typical day look like for Cooper? Let's start on the weekend when everybody's going to be there, because he did have a little bit of anxiety. And sometimes that comes from not being left alone. So here's how the conversation went. Hey, tell me about Cooper's typical day. Well, let's start on the weekend. The wife would say, well, I would say to my husband, did you medicate the dog? I didn't medicate the dog. I thought you medicated the dog. I didn't medicate the dog. That's your job. You medicate the dog. I was cooking breakfast. No, I thought you medicated the dog. Meanwhile, Cooper is bouncing off the walls, losing his mind, because he just needs an outlet for his nose and his energy, and all he's getting is medicated. So when I asked them why did they choose Cooper, Cooper was in the shelter, they saw him on their website, went in, and why did they choose Cooper? Because he was cute. There's really nothing cuter than a hound, I have to say. You saw Lotto here. But that is the wrong reason to choose a dog from a rescue situation or from a shelter situation. So the right reason is because you understand the needs of that particular breed or breed mix, and you're prepared to meet them for as long as it takes to transform that dog's behavior into a dog that you can love for life. So now that I knew about Cooper's past, I knew the frustrations of the owners and what the solutions they thought were appropriate, which weren't appropriate. I also knew why they chose the dog, so we're already behind the 8 ball. I had him. They had invested, though, let's give them credit. They chose to invest for 4 weeks, a 4-week boarding and training program to transform Cooper into the dog they thought they wanted. They thought they would have a couch potato who would curl up beside them and wait, like so many people do, with bated breath for the owners to come home so he could sleep at their feet again because they would be tired after work. So now that I knew what I was dealing with, I set a goal to provide Cooper with the fulfillment factor that they could meet, that he could live with, to allow everybody to live in harmony together. So 2 weeks into his board and train program, I invited them to come back because he made tremendous progress. I live on 100 acres, but I was working my business as a side hustle, so I was working all day long, just like them. But I took Cooper with me to work, where he was quite happy to stay in the vehicle. He didn't need to be in a crate. He just slept in the back seat, fine. So when his owners came after 2 weeks to see how he was making out, we went for a walk, off leash, through the woods, on the trail, in the forest on my property, just letting Cooper be a hound. Going in the water, sniffing, well, not swimming, but you know how hounds are, right, Lotto? Taking a drink, running off in the bush, coming back and checking in, all the things that make a dog happy, because he was just being a hound that loves to move. When we finished the walk, we came back up to my training yard and sat together, and Cooper curled up at his owner's feet and fell asleep. They were gobsmacked. In the 3 or 4 months that they'd had him, they'd never seen him relax like that, ever. They were just in total disbelief. So what they said was, the Cooper that we dropped off is not the Cooper that we're seeing here in front of us now. So they appeared to be overjoyed. When they left, they were already talking about what they were going to do in their future together and how they could make this work when he came home. We just had 2 more weeks to polish up some loose ends and rough edges and get Cooper ready to go home. Less than 1 week later, I received an email from Cooper's family. They've decided not to take Cooper back, but they'll come over and pick up the crate at some point, which, by the way, they never did. Not because he was a bad dog. They were overjoyed at what they saw in his behavior, but they just didn't want to do the work. That was we don't want to do that. We don't want to have to walk him. We want to walk him once or twice a week, when in reality he needs it 3 times a day. Not 2 walks a day. In fact, not any walks, period. They didn't want to do that. No time in nature. That's too much trouble. And not really wanting to give him the chance to be what he was, which was a hound, which uses his nose. Now, Walker hounds are a little different than beagles because they're not rocking to their nose to the ground. They're looking up. But so, I was upset about that because I really wasn't set up to keep him. I still wanted the best for him. And from that email, what I knew was they weren't it. So honestly, while I became Cooper's reluctant 4th home, it saved his life. Their decision to not do what Cooper needed saved his life. It would have been easier on everybody if they had made that decision before they took him home from the shelter, and if the shelter had done their due diligence in the interview and said, you know what, you've got to do this, this, and this to meet this dog's needs, and then maybe all that would have been. So I didn't have any expectations one way or the other. I just knew what Cooper needed. He was fine here. I knew he couldn't stay here, but that's kind of how it goes. You learn pretty quickly as a professional dog trainer. You either learn how to say no or you learn how to help dogs. And so I took Cooper with me everywhere because, as I said, training was a side hustle for me at that time. And Cooper couldn't be left alone, particularly not for 8 to 10 hours a day. I commute. I live at a distance. I don't live in town. So I took him to work with me. He stayed fine in the car in between work sessions because I would get him out 3 times a day just to introduce him to the city and walk around. He was good. And then one day, a few weeks later, I think we were at about week number 6, I dropped into my local pet supply store where I buy my dog food and other things to pick up food. Excuse me. And as usual, it was the end of the day, so it was quiet. I spent some time chatting with the owner, and I brought Cooper in the store with me, and we had a conversation. And the owner, let's call him Ted, because that was his name, his young son was there after school, just waiting with Dad to go home. And I didn't know that they had recently lost they had a beagle that they had for 15 years, Rosie, and Rosie had recently passed. And they thought they were through the grieving process, but they were still sad. Anyway, so Ted's son, little fella, cute little guy, was instantly enamored with Cooper. And since we were in the store, nobody was there, I handed him the leash and invited him to just walk around the store, just hang out with him, because he's like, could I walk him? Said, "Yeah, but don't take him outside, just walk him in the store." Nobody was there, and every time I looked up, there was this little guy hanging on to the end of the leash, and Cooper's Oh, Cooper's on the sniff safari of his life, dragging him around the store. Cooper came back because that's what hounds do. They do their circuit, they do their perimeter check, they get on a scent, they track that scent until it's not warm anymore. Then they come back to where they started from. And that's exactly what Cooper did. And he laid at my feet and he went to sleep, curled up in a tight little ball. And the little boy curled up right around him, and together they spooned. They were right there at the front counter, and Ted looked over like this, and there was a little ball of boy and dog together. And Ted said, well, I'm not the one you have to convince. There's two more people at home, his other son and his wife. And I said, no problem. Cooper came home with me, and he was happy to do what we wanted him. But it was only a few days later that we got the word that Cooper was going to his new home. So we helped them. It was interesting as his older son was a little bit reluctant because he was afraid that they would be tarnishing the memory of their beagle, Rosie, by bringing another dog into the house. So as I said to Ted, no pressure. You let him work that through on his own, because there's nothing worse than forcing something that someone in the family doesn't want. And everybody grieves differently, and I respected that. So we just waited, and I think it was maybe another 2 days, and he said, okay, I'll try. I'm willing to try it. And I said, if it doesn't work out, I'm willing to take him back, because he was a good dog. So away he went, happily ever after with Ted and his family. And really the rest is history. Just an abundance of funny Cooper stories of his life with Ted and his family. He was never this dog because of his oh my God, his checkered past, if you like. 5 homes, and he's still not a year old. He's in his 5th home now, finally. And one day I was there picking up supplies, and Cooper was there. The whole family was there, actually. I can't remember. Anyway, the whole family was there, and they'd been shopping. And Cooper jumped in the van, and the little fellow was there, and there was a box there, and it was all tattered and had a pie in it. And Cooper had enjoyed that pie, at least half of it. And I was expecting this kid to throw a fit and Mom to throw a fit. And the little guy climbed in the van, and he opened up the tattered box, and he went, oh, no emotion, no anything. Cooper, you ate half the pie. Close the box. That was it. And Ted just laughed, and no punishment, no drama, just understanding that Cooper took advantage of the opportunity and he ate that pie. Here's how it went. That family didn't expect any gratitude from Cooper, and yet he'd been a bit of a transition, but they knew they were starting from ground zero to build their own life together. They didn't expect gratitude, and they didn't expect perfection. What they did was paid attention and were willing to put in the time and do what was needed to help Cooper be the best that he could be as a hound. And they set up routines that just allowed Cooper to do exactly that matched his instincts. For instance, how did they overcome his need? He loved to shred things. The pie box wasn't about the pie, it was about the box. When he shredded the box, he discovered the pie. So bonus, I'm going to shred some more. And how did they deal with that? Every day before leaving for work, first of all, they enrolled him in a doggy daycare, and a reputable doggy daycare. So he had his needs met. He was good with dogs anyways, because he'd already been here, and he met his needs met, and they would drop him off and pick him up. But there was times on the weekends when they needed to go away. And in order to help Cooper deal with his anxiety, Ted would bring out the recycle box full of paper and leave it in the room so that Cooper felt like he was actually stealing something. He would shred everything in that box. Ted put cereal boxes and things in there that he was allowed to shred, and he shred everything. Then he would go lay down. That was it. He just needed to get that anxiety out. Then he would go lay down. Until eventually, I don't know how many months or even years it took for him to overcome that, but he just stopped being anything that he was interested in doing anymore, and he just didn't do it. So he outgrew it, so to speak. But it took time and patience. Cooper also had an intolerance for crates, which was, as I mentioned, I took him to work with me, but he slept in the car. He didn't need the crate. He was fine. He was anxious in the crate here when he was here. I ended up tying him to my bed, and he slept there. But how did they overcome his crate intolerance? The first few months, as I said, they took him to doggy daycare, so they didn't have to be cooped up in a crate all the time. So the crate wasn't exactly perceived by him as a death sentence. And then one day, just on a what else can I do? Ted filled up the Kong. He put Cooper in the crate, and he put the Kong in the crate full of treats with Cooper. Cooper busted out of the crate, but he didn't open the door. He just busted out, and the crate, it was wire, so it stretched, and then it went bing, and it sprung back into place. So there was Cooper outside of the crate, and the Kong was inside of the crate. And he hadn't gotten the treats out of it because he was too anxious to get out of the crate. That was a defining moment for Cooper. Ted said they came home, and there was Cooper laying in front of the crate, staring at the Kong because it wouldn't come out. After that, he really wasn't that upset about being in the crate. So he eventually outgrew the need to be there, and they could leave him home, and he would just go sleep on the couch. So with a little creativity and a ton of love and patience from Ted and his entire family, Cooper, in return, gave them a lifetime full of memories. Everything that a dog has to offer, and what every dog eventually does, trusted them for his life. So what's the takeaway here? When we adopt a dog, especially a rescue dog, it's easy to fall into that mindset that we are, quote, saving them, that they owe us something, that they should be grateful, that they should be calm because now they're safe, that they should be obedient because now they know the language, which they never do, by the way, and they should love us because we love them back. But here's the truth. Dogs don't think in those terms. They don't understand gratitude the way we do. They aren't capable of emotional debt like we are. They just want to do what works best for them. That's why they need clarity. And what they do understand is that consistency, clarity, fairness, predictability, a predictable daily routine, communication with body language rather than voice, because dogs most of them aren't talkers. And when they are, they talk for a reason. They want to feel safe, and they want to have a connection with someone they can trust and respect. When they trust that being, hopefully it's you, then they're willing to learn from you. Then they're willing to work with you. Then they're willing to build their life with you. That's leadership. That's what you can provide through fairness, consistency, clarity, predictability. That's what leaders do. They'll show you trust, not because they feel grateful, but because you've earned it. They don't give it willingly. They want to know that they can count on you, and they'll trust you when you've earned that trust. So here's what every new adopter, I highly recommend you keep this in mind if you're thinking of adopting a dog, or you've got one and you're not quite sure what you got in front of you here, like, oh my goodness, what have we done? Number one, genetics matter. You can't love a high prey-driven dog like a hound into being a couch potato. Their DNA just simply can't accommodate a life without sniffing, searching, and hunting with purpose. All dogs need a purpose. Hounds have a particular purpose. Malinois have a particular purpose. They like to use their mouth. Border collies have a purpose. They like to move things. And unless you understand what that DNA is telling you, it can simply be conflict after conflict when it's really not necessary. Number two, behavior is communication. That crazy energy, that shutdown look, that's not a bad dog. It's usually unmet needs. Dog bouncing off the walls. Did you medicate the dog? No, I didn't medicate the dog. I thought you medicated the dog. Dog's bouncing off the walls. He's a bad dog. We need to medicate him. No, you need to meet his needs. Give him a productive outlet for that energy. There's no bad dogs. There's confused dogs, and there's unfulfilled dogs. And let go of the hero story. You adopted a living being, not a project. Two-legged or four-legged living beings that need that compassion and understanding. It's a family member. It needs a relationship, not a rescue movie. And you know what? It's okay if it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. If it was easy, everybody would do it. The shelters and rescues wouldn't be jam-packed full of dogs that can't find homes. It's supposed to be hard, but perseverance, persistence pays. It pays dividends. It pays you rewards for life. If you need help, if you need training, and you want to take more time, that's normal. And it's smart to recognize those things. Time and patience are your friends to build a consistency, to build a routine, to build a dog that trusts you to keep them safe. It's okay. You'll get there. And the right fit matters. There's no magic wand to success, especially when you're picking a dog. And some people go to the shelter week after week. They see the same dog. Oh my God, this dog loves us. Then they get it home and it's not the right fit. It's a nightmare because they only saw it in that environment. And it changed when I got out into a different world. When you bring a dog home, a minimum of 90 days is always recommended before you do anything drastic, because dogs take time and every dog has a different timeline. There's a formula out there that goes 3-3-3, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. Yes, that's a guideline, but it's not written in stone every dog is different. I've had dogs here that I've rehomed. I haven't had any from traumatic experiences. I've worked with clients who have that. But even the good ones that come from, Josie was probably the worst. She came from being cooped up for her whole formative time, like 6 months of her life spent in a 12 by 12 bedroom with no human interaction. And she took about 3 years. So there's your 3, but it was 3 years before she started to feel comfortable being left alone, not having accidents in the house. It takes time, and you need to have the right fit. So spend that 90 days, and if you need to, after 90 days, get some help before you give up on that dog. But remember, if you recognize the dog's not the proper fit for you, giving that dog to a person who is the right fit can be the best gift of all for both of you. And Cooper the Hound, the rest of his story, Cooper lived for 13 wonderful years with Ted and his family, and he just passed this April. His passing was peaceful, and he was surrounded by people that he loved, and those that loved him, because he trusted those people with his life, and they gave him life. He lived a big, houndy life, full of trail walks, deep sniffs, cottage adventures, and he had naps in the sun. He had lots of boxes he could chew up, and yes, he probably ate a few more pies. And he said thank you in the most hound-like way, by staying loyal to his people, those that he instinctively knew understood him, and he just knew that they got him. Cooper's loyalty, his trust and respect for his family was how he showed his love to them every single day. Sometimes it was hard to see it, but it was there. And honestly, that's more than enough. So if you're an adopter, or you work with adopters, or you know someone who's going to be adopt a dog, I'd love to hear from you. What was something that surprised you about your adopted dog in those early days, and maybe even beyond? What skeletons popped up maybe a year down the road? And what did you love most about them for the rest of their life with you? Please drop me a message or post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you, and let's talk about it. So my friends, if you found this episode helpful, please follow me, rate the episode, good, bad, or otherwise, because I want to do this better for you. I don't like talking to myself very much, so I usually have guests. So I'd love to know how you found this episode. And by all means, share this Paws and Profits podcast with your dog-loving friends, because whether they're new to adoption or about to adopt, let's help them succeed. Right, Lotto? Think so? Yeah, I think so. And remember, training time is all the time. Either you're training your dog or your dog's training you. The good news is you get to choose. That's all for this week, my friends. We'll see you in the next episode of Paws and Profits, the podcast. Bye for now.